Urban Media Today talks sports with Ray Porter Jr., Vince Butts, and Trevin A. Jones on Urban Media Today Radio.
It's game time!
Urban Media Today talks sports. This time I will introduce them because they're special. Got Kenn Rashad, HBCUsports.com, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Ray Porter Jr. And then you got Greg Hoyd Jr. I'm just messing with you, Ray. Greg Hoyd Jr. Playing for envelopes. Ray is on the show all the time. For people who know, I always pick on Ray. Ray's my boy. He writes for us, covers the Pittsburgh Pirates, covers the Pittsburgh Steelers, and covers Pitt football and basketball as a writer. Ray does his thing, and he doesn't get enough props, so that's why I always pick on him. So we were talking about this situation on the HBCU landscape. And I like what Kenn said earlier, because I was putting out my chest too, and I think Doc was doing it at the same time, where we were saying, you don't hear this craziness with HBCUs. They're covering their kids. They're covering their students. The students are more important than that dollar bill. And that looked like that was the case until a couple of things happened. Now, I'm not putting down any HBCU. I will never sit here and disrespect any HBCU, and I'll tell you that. I'm going to take up for all of them. But a story is a story. The facts are the facts. And it's our job to cover the facts, to make sure they're out there correctly. That's why we're here. So Kenn doing a great job that he does with HBCUsports.com. Released a story on FAMU Rattlers having to sign waivers to play. At least that's what was said. Read Kenn's story. That's why I put it out there. Go to HBCUsports.com and see what he wrote. But Kenn's here to talk about it too, and so is Doc. I, for one, gentleman, I already weighed in on this. Ray and Coach heard me many times. I think all of this is just talk right now, because I think that even though everybody's trying to play, they're grown people. They know daggone well in the back of their minds, just like you said, Doc, 150,000 people have died from COVID-19. How are you going to put 18, 19, 17, 20-year-olds on a football field in contact with each other for 2 hours on any given day? That doesn't even include the practices. If you're allowed to have contact practices, you're going to be on the field for 2 hours going at it. And we both, if anybody that played football, you know, you're spitting, sweating, not intentionally spitting on somebody, breathing heavily. You know, I had big dudes, 300 pounds, and I'm just a little cornerback, you know, trying to knock me out, and they're breathing on me. So I'm like, okay, if you have that situation going on, somebody's going to get sick. Correct? I mean, and now, so when you come back to FAM and you come back to A&T, and I don't even know if the number was ever confirmed when it was said about some Aggies coming down with a positive test. My question to you gentlemen is this, and answer that, and I'll shut up in a second. It's one thing to test positive. It's another thing to come back and have a negative test and say you're cleared. And Kenn brought up a great point. Even as a young athlete, you can have ramifications from COVID-19 because you have adults. Some people can't breathe right anymore. Some people, you know, their equilibrium is off. Like some people, there's just different things as a result of being sick that they have to get over as well. The honesty, integrity of these programs is going to be tested, because if a player does test positive and then comes back and tests negative, and knowing we're talking about students and you can't give out their medical information, who do you tell and when do you say, oh yeah, this person's cleared, it's okay to play? Any one of you gentlemen can weigh in on that.
First of all, when you said honesty and integrity, I mean, these coaches, they're not loyal to these players around the country, man. I mean, that's tough. I mean, I hear you try, you know, that sounds good, you know, but in recruiting and players, they'll sign with a school one day, and the next day the coach is gone. The coach has promised him he's going to be there to develop them. He's went in and talked to the grandma and took pictures and did the electric slide in the front with the family and everything like that. The next thing you know, he's gone. So, you know, as far as like honesty and integrity, these coaches are trying to move up and make a living or move to a better job. Now, some coaches may want to stay and dig out, but they don't have the resources to support them. I mean, the mental health of these athletes right now is incredible. The mental health of the parents. that are sending their babies off to college because the athletes are like, I gotta go, mom. This is my shot. This is my opportunity. But the mom's at home like, but baby, she's talking to her daughter. Her daughter's going to go off on tennis scholarship, and the daughter like, mom, this is my shot. The basketball, the swimmer, the lacrosse player. They want to go out. They want to go to college as a scholarship, but mom's at home weeping. Dad's at home biting. What do I do when I drop my child off?
You froze up again there, Coach.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry about that.
You said dropping your child off. I heard that part.
Yeah.
But,
So,
okay.
What do you expect when you drop your child off at a school? Are they quarantined right away? I know a lot of the Division I schools, as soon as the kids are coming there, they put them on 14-day quarantine up in hotels. Nobody's talking about that. Mm-hmm. But that's what's happening. Can HBCUs do that? Can they afford to do that?
Yeah. Ken, go ahead, weigh in on that.
Well, you know what? Now I'll say this. Now I want to make sure I understand Brother Hoy clearly, because are we asking the question, can HBCUs do that, or are we talking about HBCU athletic programs in particular? Because as I know it, HBCUs are taking what I believe are the necessary steps, that are, and keep in mind, and I say this because many of these institutions, keep in mind, are state supported. So it's not only in the interest of the HBCUs, but many of these decisions are basically the modifications that are being made are typically are done on the recommendation of a panel of individuals who represent a number of agencies within for instance, my son goes to Grambling. So the modifications that were made on campus for individuals who are going to be returning to classes next week were the result, from what I understand, of a consortium of individuals from various schools within the system to make the necessary recommendations that each of the schools had to make. So I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know in this particular instance if we can necessarily kind of make this an HBCU type thing, because again, COVID doesn't give a damn about an HBCU or PWI. But I just think that each individual school, PWI, HBCU or not, are basically doing whatever they can. I really do believe this, are doing the very best that they can to make sure that the environment that those students are going to be in are to the best that they can possibly do within the confines and the infrastructure that they have to work with. So I don't know if I can really answer that question if they can. I guess the only the true or the honest answer that I can give you in that respect, Brother Hoyt, is they are willing and they're trying.
Doc.
Yes, certainly. I would jump in here and say, in the words of Jada Pinkett Smith, it's an entanglement.
Good one, Doc.
I love it. Play your words, huh? Okay. So elaborate.
Certainly.
You would bring pop culture into this conversation.
Thank you, Ken. But Ken is on the money in so many different ways. It's complicated. And while I love to talk about HBCUs, I think sometimes we do them a disservice. Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways, HBCUs have many different frameworks of how you look at the HBCU, right? And I talk about here, not to be too much of a selfish plug, but in terms of a book I did, which was the Athletic Experience, talking about the history of HBCU, past, present, and persistence. And one of the reasons I did this in some of my journal articles, as we talked about earlier with the poll breakdown, we really need to disaggregate HBCU and not talk about them in a monolithic framework. We have private HBCUs. We have public HBCUs, as Ken talked about. Those public HBCUs get funds from the state. And in a lot of ways, while we have concerns about the funding that they get from the states, they are able to operate. Most of the argument that people have in terms of HBCUs is them getting their fair share. People oftentimes confuse that with the framework that they don't have money, they don't have resources.
Exactly right.
They tend to have resources. And even when you get to the private side, you start to look at your private institutions such as Morehouse, Howard and Hampton that have large endowments? Are they on the same level as some of the peer private institutions of Harvard? No, they've had many years to get ahead of them, but they do have mega endowments that do allow them to do certain things. And for example, to give you a pure example, in the state of Alabama was using CDC money, federal money, that they're going to use to test students. Now, the question may be how many times they're going to test them, which is another one, but just roll with me for this for a minute. That means all the institutions, public or private, particularly the public institutions, were going to get federal and state funds to test. Well, in other states, in the state of Texas, they got similar type money, but they decided to give the money to the students early so they could survive during this period of transition, getting computers, getting hotspots so they could do their work. So because we live in this framework where states are able to do their same different things, because we haven't had any leadership for the most part from a federal level, everybody's doing different things. So it's hard to, in this case, to really look at HBCUs in one framework, which is, I believe, is what Ken is saying in a lot of ways. We really need to disaggregate this information. And while some HBCUs could afford to test their whole teams and test them multiple times, to be frank with you, because some of them in cities where the city itself are providing free COVID testing. So there's no direct cost associated with it in regards to how they do it and how many times they test. In some state, some of the institutions have the funds to test them multiple times. Now, do you want to spend your funds in that way? That's a different question. Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of put that on the table, that we need to be extremely careful about how do we look at HBCUs when we talk about them. That's great to talk about them in this group dynamic, but we do need to differentiate to talk about them in different ways, whether they're at the FCS Division I level or NCAA Division II or NAIA level. And even with those frameworks, we need to look at them. How do they operate within a region or within a state in regards to how they get funding? And I can go through a whole framework of that, but this is more sports related, so I won't do that. But those are one things that you talk about. I will end on this note that we cannot leave Morgan State out of this equation, because they actually had athletes back. And while we had North Carolina A&T and FAMU, and justifiably, we're talking about those big brands and what they did, and they're leaving the MEAC, but there was a MEAC institution, Morgan State, that brought athletes back. Early on, it was my understanding that they didn't have anybody test positive, any of the athletes that came back, as I like to call them, college athletes, come back. But unfortunately, that is not the case most recently when we were starting to hear about it. But for whatever reason, we didn't hear that information. So I was like Ken in a lot of ways. I was studying so much on the SWAC and other HBCUs, namely the SIAC and CIAA, and you were hearing, for the most part, they weren't even bringing student athletes, students in general, back to campus. So I kind of went with that framework, and I was really disheartened when I heard that was fact, because in all my mind, I was singing the chorus. HBCUs, we do it differently, right? We're not even bringing student athletes back to campus because we are closed. Our campuses are closed. We're not bringing anybody, faculty, staff, and we're not coming back. At best, we had need essential employees that were having to come back so we could make sure we could operate to some degree with a fall and summer schedule. So I was devastated when I heard this news about HBCUs. And as you said earlier, the reporting needed to be done. And maybe there's a backstory to it. We can dig in there and find out. But just on the surface area, when you talk about the branding of these institutions, we can't take the same hits that other institutions. I like to refer to them as historically white colleges and universities to solve the level playing field between the two of them. So I purposely don't use PWI or the other terms out there. And as Ken said, exactly right. We don't have the fortitude and the nature to be able to play the same game because we know the negative perception when general media gets this information is different. So that's why it's important for us to, one, understand that, and we still have to operate in different spheres, but it's more important that we have shows like this to be able to tell the story from different perspectives in such a way that people get all the points before they put themselves in a position that they just hear this loud noise in regards to what HBCUs are doing.
Mm-hmm. Always takes an alpha man to provide clarity. I got two newts on the show. I had to put that out there.
And I was just about to raise a fist and say, "Go on, Doc." But you know what?
I couldn't resist, Ken and Greg. I couldn't resist, man. Oh, that's good stuff. What we're gonna do, and it's clarity, Ken and Doc. Thank you, because what you just did was you provided clarity, and I like the fact that you said when you're looking at historically black colleges and universities. For those of you who don't know, that's what we mean by HBCU. When we look at that, you can't just throw it all in one bowl. You have to actually kind of look at everything piece by piece, because everybody is not doing the same exact thing, and that's obvious from the stories that we're uncovering. This is a part of the show, gentlemen. We're about to wrap it up. It's the end of the fourth quarter. We play a full game here. It's Urban Media Today Talk Sports. We're going to go around the table. Coach Hoyd, we're going to start with you. Then we're going to go to Ray. You guys will talk about something that stood out this week on your mind, was heavy on your heart, on your mind. It could be sports related. Doesn't have to be. You got 60 seconds, Coach. What you got?
Yeah, just shout out to CT Vivian, the new trendsetter. We lost a very pretty powerful trailblazer. I'm gonna call it trailblazer. And then of course we lost. I know a lot of people may not like the Morehouse man of Herman Cain, but we lost another good one today. Another Morehouse man, more HBCU man. And then of course another frat, Sigma frat, and John Lewis, a Fisk man. Just men that you have opportunity. I'm a history guy. I like to look at content. That's why when Doc was talking earlier, I'm gonna get back with you on some of that stuff. I love that. I love that content. But those are pretty pretty powerful men, black men of I think of achievement status that I can definitely look at and dig a little bit and applaud them for their successful time on here on this earth.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Ray Porter Jr. What you got, Ray?
I wanted to take the time to say happy anniversary to my wife, Nikki. We celebrated 14 years of marriage on Wednesday the 29th. I'm grateful. We spent time up in Pittsburgh. Seven Springs is a ski resort. Perfect place for social distancing. I can say they did a good job, so I applaud them for that. And just to be able to hang out and to spend time with the one that I love. And also kudos to my son, Raymond Porter III, who just took the second half of his schooling by storm and improved on all of his grades, and he is ready for the 7th grade, 5 years away from going to college and getting closer to a job.
Good stuff.
So I'm very proud of my son.
Good stuff. And with all due respect, Nikki is beautiful, so I don't know how you did it. Nikki, God bless you. But just messing with you, man. Kenn Rashad, what you got, good brother?
I guess the only thing I probably end the show with is saying that here it is, July 30th, and given where we are right now with this pandemic, and clearly I think it's safe to say there is no end in sight, and yet we still are having conversations on whether or not we're going to have football in the fall. And I just think it is just, I don't want to use the wrong word, but it's disgusting. That we are literally debating this, and yet we've got, the NCAA can literally just say, you know what, let's just put an end to it, and that's done. And I understand that they want to give the conferences the independence to make these decisions themselves, but man, let's, we got other options. And if we're really concerned about humanity and life and so forth, let's just kind of move forward in unison. We still got the spring, and life doesn't end per se, but let's just do the right thing and get the money out of the way with sports, and just kind of, do the humanitarian thing and just put a halt to this for now.
And I got to say, I do see Grambling State behind you there, sir. I see the Tiger up there.
The greatest institution in the history of the universe.
Okay. All right. I'm not even going to mess with you. All right, Doc, what you got?
Yeah, he said that like he meant it, so I'm not touching that with him. First, let me say kudos to my co-panelists during this broadcast. I enjoyed the time, and I echo all the points that you made because they were right on point. I'm going to take my time and share a little love to another one of our colleagues, Mo Carter, Southern University. He's up there in Huntsville, Alabama, covering the news. He broke the story in a lot of ways about North Carolina A&T and the Big South, and I thought that was appropriate. HBCU Game Day came back into even a little deeper story, and they gave credit to him in terms of what he found out covering their media day. And we won't have time to go deep into this, but you alluded to it in a lot of ways. It was very fascinating to see that it looked like North Carolina A&T, as much as we talk about it, Ken, that they were prepared to play a season. Now
They were desperate.
Exactly. And we're not leaving out our cousins over here at Tennessee State as they're independent and in the OVC and looking like they're doing. But the fact that A&T is still a member of the MEAC made this story a little more interesting. We heard this at the Division II level to give a little love, if you want to call it that, to Miles College in terms of their interest, saying they might do something, right? But North Carolina A&T really came out and seems as if they were going to have a board meeting that was going to vote on it. And then some backstory in regards to the MEAC conference saying, hey, we're still thinking about doing something in the spring as well. And all of a sudden that was shot down. Big South came up. We don't want to get in the way of that. No, you're not going to take the place of Hampton University in their schedule when Hampton said, we're removing ourselves from participating this year in the Big South Conference. The Big South Conference said, yes, we're pushing forward. And it looks like A&T was going to jump on board, but not so fast. The MEAC said, I think that is a fascinating story. If you want more on it, go take a deep dive and ask yourself about North Carolina A&T and what transpired just a couple of days in their board meeting when they said at the end of the day, no, we're not going to do all of that. We're just leaving the MEAC as if we didn't already know that. I was like, you call a board meeting for that?
I feel you, Doc. I feel you. This is what I'm going to leave with everybody. First and foremost, check out Dr. Kenyatta Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Also, check out my brother Kenn Rashad. He's a noob, but I still call him brother. Kenn Rashad over there, HBCUsports.com. And also, always pay attention to Playing for Envelopes with Coach William Greg Hoyt Jr. And you can find Ray Porter Jr. right here at Urban Media Today at urbanmediatoday.com. Also on Urban Media Today, we have a 24/7 radio station that's on the website. It's musically driven, but this podcast will broadcast on that every Saturday morning. We call it Sports Saturdays on Urban Media Today Radio. Give us a call if you got any suggestions or questions, 412-709-6130. The year 2020, the year of experiments and the year of change. From this point moving forward, the only thing that's going to be permanent is change. And a lot of things that are going to be permanent moving forward are going to be executed here in 2020. So with that being said, people, I say this. The only thing that you can spend that you don't get back, you don't get a refund, and it's the most valuable thing that you have because we're all rich with it. We just don't know how much of it is time. It's Urban Media Today Talks Sports. We'll see y'all next week.
Urban Media Today Talks Sports every week on Urban Media Today Radio, where you can listen in on free music and podcasts on our SoundCloud station at Urban Media Today. And for more information, log on to urbanmediatoday.com, your lifestyle, entertainment, and sports blog website.
What type of games being played? How's it doing that? I get up, all right?